razor-sharp teeth, blood in the water, flesh stripped from bone in minutes. Piranhas, the most terrifying fish in the world, right? You've seen the movies, you've heard the stories. One wrong step and you're devoured alive by a swarm of bloodthirsty carnivores. But what would actually happen if you fell into a pool full of piranhas? Would you be torn apart? Would you feel every bite? How long would you survive? The truth might shock you. Not Jaws, but supposedly worse. This is not a video about the fictional 70s blockbuster Jaws. We're talking about a fish that's much, much smaller than a great white shark. But supposedly its bite is about 2 times more powerful relative to its size. Piranhas are freshwater fish native to South American rivers. Most species grow to about 15 to 25 centimeters long, roughly the size of your hand. Some species can reach up to 50 centimeters, but that's unusual. They're not massive creatures. You could hold one in your hands, though that wouldn't be advisable given their teeth. And those teeth are what make piranhas so infamous. They're triangular, razor-sharp, and interlock perfectly when the jaw closes. The teeth are so sharp that indigenous peoples have historically used them as tools and weapons. Supposedly, if a piranha were to bite you, you would only realize it after you saw the blood. The bite is so clean and quick that you wouldn't feel the initial cut. But what if you weren't dealing with just one piranha? What if you fell into a pool and were suddenly surrounded by a school of these colorful, fast-moving carnivores? How much would you feel? How long would you last? Would you be eaten alive? Let's separate fact from fiction and find out what would really happen. Piranha history. Ancient predators. Piranhas have been around for a really, really long time. They're not some recent evolutionary development or modern species. These fish have ancient roots that stretch back millions of years. Fossil evidence places the piranha's ancestors in South America as far back as 25 million years ago. That's long before humans existed, long before many modern mammals evolved. The continents were in different positions. The climate was different. But piranhas' ancestors were already there, swimming in ancient rivers. The modern piranhas we know and recognize today have been around for approximately 1.8 million years. For context, modern humans, Homo sapiens, have only existed for about 300,000 years. Piranhas have been doing their thing for 6 times longer than we've been around. So we've had plenty of time to study these fish, to learn about their behavior, to understand what they eat and how they hunt. Scientists have had nearly 2 centuries of modern biological study to observe piranhas in their natural habitat and in controlled environments. But despite all this time and all this research, myths about piranhas persist. Many people still believe things about piranhas that simply aren't true. So how much of what you think you know about piranhas is actually accurate? Pay attention. What you're about to learn might just save your life, or at least save you from unnecessary panic. The Roosevelt myth, how the legend began. The idea that piranhas are vicious, bloodthirsty creatures that will tear you apart in minutes is largely a myth. And that myth has a very specific origin story that involves a former United States president and a rather cruel demonstration. In 1914, former US President Theodore Roosevelt was on a survey expedition in Brazil. He was exploring the Amazon region, documenting wildlife and geography for scientific purposes. During this expedition, Roosevelt witnessed something that would shape piranha's reputation for the next century. A group of local Brazilians decided to demonstrate the ferocity of piranhas for their distinguished visitor. But they didn't just show Roosevelt some piranhas swimming peacefully in a river. That wouldn't have been impressive enough. Instead, they set up a staged demonstration designed for maximum shock value. The locals found a section of river and blocked it off with nets, creating an enclosed pool. Then they captured piranhas from the surrounding area and placed them in this enclosed space. Here's the critical detail. They kept these piranhas trapped in this pool without food for several days. They deliberately starved them. Then, in front of Roosevelt, they tossed a dead cow into this pool of starving piranhas. What happened next was predictable. The feeding frenzy was absolute chaos. Dozens of starving piranhas attacked the dead cow simultaneously, stripping flesh from bone in a spectacular display of carnivorous feeding. Roosevelt was shocked and horrified by what he witnessed. The feeding frenzy led him to see piranhas as the embodiment of evil ferocity. He wrote extensively about piranhas in his accounts of the expedition, comparing their teeth and jaws to those of sharks. He claimed that their preferred prey was usually much larger than themselves, which would make them extremely dangerous to humans. Roosevelt's account was published and widely read. The story stuck, and naturally, like Jaws decades later, Piranhas became perfect material for horror entertainment. Hollywood makes it worse. The Piranha movies. In 1978, a cult classic horror film titled Piranha was released. The movie depicted piranhas as aggressive killing machines that hunted humans deliberately and efficiently. It showed people being devoured in minutes, rivers running red with blood, and piranhas as an unstoppable threat. The movie was commercially successful and spawned several sequels, remakes, and imitators. Piranha 3D came out in 2010, featuring even more exaggerated and gory piranha attacks in a spring break setting. These films cemented the image of piranhas as deadly man-eaters in popular culture. The problem is that these movies spread several myths about piranhas that a lot of people still believe today. Many viewers assumed the films were based on realistic piranha behavior, perhaps exaggerated for entertainment but fundamentally accurate. They weren't. The movies were almost entirely fiction, built on the foundation of Roosevelt's mistaken observations nearly a century earlier. But myths are sticky, and once they enter popular culture, they're very hard to correct. The real truth. Piranhas are mostly harmless. So what's the actual truth about piranhas? Prepare to have your expectations completely reversed. The real truth is that piranhas are relatively calm fish. They're not swimming around looking for things to attack. They're not aggressive toward creatures larger than themselves. They spend most of their time just being fish, swimming around, looking for food, avoiding predators. And here's the part that might surprise you most. The majority of piranha species are actually scavengers, not active hunters. They primarily feed on insects, worms, crustaceans, and plant material in the rivers where they live. Many species are partially or primarily herbivorous, eating fruits and seeds that fall into the water. Of the approximately 30 to 60 species of piranhas, scientists disagree on the exact count. Only a handful are attracted to the smell of blood and actively hunt live prey. And those carnivorous species tend to go after prey that's roughly the same size as them or smaller. They hunt other fish, not creatures many times their size. So what would happen if you fell into a pool of piranhas? Here's the truth that horror movies don't want you to know. The piranhas would probably be scared of you. Think about it from their perspective. You're an enormous creature, hundreds or thousands of times their mass, suddenly crashing into their environment, creating massive waves and disturbance. Their instinct would be to scatter and hide, not to attack. Piranhas aren't interested in live humans. Piranhas aren't really interested in humans as food, period. We're not part of their natural diet. They didn't evolve to hunt large mammals. They evolved to eat fish, insects, and plant matter in South American rivers. The only circumstances where piranhas might bite a human are extreme and rare. First, they would need to be extremely hungry, starving, like the piranhas in Roosevelt's demonstration. Second, even starving piranhas are more likely to bite a human who is already dead or severely injured and bleeding in the water. If you fell into a pool of piranhas while healthy and alive, thrashing around and swimming, the worst that would probably happen is you might get nipped once or twice. A curious piranha might investigate this strange large creature by giving an exploratory bite. That would hurt. Those teeth are sharp, but it wouldn't be fatal or even particularly dangerous. And even those exploratory nips are unlikely. Studies have shown that piranhas generally avoid large active animals. There are countless indigenous peoples and locals who swim regularly in piranha-infested rivers without incident. Children play in these waters. People fish and bathe in them. The piranhas coexist with humans without attacking them. Never killed a human. The scientific record. Here's a fact that might disappoint horror movie fans. There has never been a scientifically documented and verified case of a human being killed by piranhas. Never. Not once in recorded history has a person died from a piranha attack. There are no confirmed cases in scientific literature, no verified incidents reported to authorities. Nothing. There are occasional reports of swimmers or fishermen being bitten by piranhas. usually under specific circumstances like extreme drought when fish are concentrated in small pools and starving. These bites are painful and can require medical attention, but they're not fatal. In some rare cases, bodies have been found in rivers with piranha damage. But in every verified case, investigators determined that the person died from drowning or other causes first, and then piranhas scavenged the corpse afterward. The piranhas didn't kill the person, they just cleaned up afterward because that's what scavengers do. So sorry, gory B-movie lovers, but the truth is far less exciting than the fiction. Piranhas are not the killing machines you've been led to believe. You're far more likely to be killed by a bee sting, a dog bite, or slipping in your bathtub than by a piranha. Yafafikons. What piranhas can actually do, the scary part. But don't let all this myth-busting completely ruin your fear. Even though piranhas won't attack you, the idea of what they could theoretically do is still genuinely terrifying. Because while piranhas don't hunt humans, they are impressively effective predators with some remarkable capabilities. Piranhas typically grow up to 50 centimeters long at maximum, though most are much smaller. Despite their relatively small size, they hunt in groups, sometimes schools of hundreds of fish moving together. And they have incredible bite force. This is where piranhas actually live up to some of their fearsome reputation. Relative to their body size, piranhas have one of the most powerful bites in the animal kingdom. A piranha's bite force is approximately 3 times its body weight. That might not sound impressive until you understand what it means in relative terms. Scientists measure bite force relative to body mass to compare animals of different sizes fairly. Bite force comparison. Harder than sharks and dinosaurs. When you calculate bite force relative to body size, piranhas bite harder than almost any other creature on Earth. They bite harder than great white sharks. Yes, really. A great white has massive absolute bite force, but relative to the shark's enormous body mass, the force isn't as impressive. A piranha, being tiny, generates extraordinary force for its size. Piranhas bite harder than American alligators relative to body size. Alligators have one of the strongest absolute bites in the animal kingdom, but again, they're massive creatures. Pound for pound, the piranha wins. Even more remarkably, piranhas bite harder than Tyrannosaurus rex relative to body size. Computer modeling of T-Rex jaw mechanics shows that while the dinosaur had enormous absolute bite force, enough to crush bone easily, its bite force relative to its multi-ton body mass was less impressive than a piranha's. And perhaps most shocking, piranhas bite harder than Megalodon relative to body size. Megalodon was the largest predatory shark that ever lived, with jaws big enough to swallow a car. But that tiny piranha, gram for gram, has a more powerful bite. This incredible bite force allows piranhas to slice through flesh, crush through bone, and tear apart prey with remarkable efficiency. Their interlocking teeth and powerful jaws make them incredibly effective at what they do. The hypothetical? If piranhas actually attacked. So we've established that piranhas won't actually attack a living, healthy human. But what if they did? What if, hypothetically, you fell into a pool of hungry piranhas that for some reason abandoned their normal behavior and decided to attack you? If you were attacked by a school of piranhas, and this is purely hypothetical because it doesn't happen in real life, roughly 400 of them working together could theoretically strip your body down to a skeleton in about 5 minutes. That's based on calculations of their bite force, feeding speed, and the amount of flesh on an average human body. 400 piranhas, each taking bites continuously for 5 minutes, could remove all the soft tissue from a human corpse. That's a horrifying thought, and it's part of why the piranha myth has been so persistent and effective. The idea that you could be reduced to bones in minutes by a swarm of small fish is viscerally terrifying. But remember, this is hypothetical. It doesn't happen. Piranhas don't behave this way toward living humans. This scenario requires piranhas to act completely contrary to their established behavior patterns. If you really fell in, what would actually happen? So let's go back to the original question. What would actually happen if you fell into a pool full of piranhas? Here's the realistic scenario. You hit the water with a splash. The piranhas, startled by the massive disturbance, immediately scatter in all directions to get away from you. They hide among rocks, plants, or anywhere they can get some distance from this enormous, thrashing creature. You're swimming, maybe panicking a bit because you know these are piranhas. Your movements create currents and vibrations that make the piranhas even more nervous. They stay away from you. Maybe one or two curious individuals approach to investigate. Perhaps you feel a quick nip on your foot or leg. A small exploratory bite from a brave piranha checking out what you are. It hurts. The tooth is sharp. You might bleed a little. But it's similar to a cut from a kitchen knife, not a life-threatening injury. Then you swim to the edge of the pool and climb out, probably with your heart racing from adrenaline and fear. You check your injury. It's minor, needs cleaning, and maybe a bandage. You survived your encounter with piranhas with nothing more than a small cut and a good story to tell. That's the reality. No feeding frenzy, no being stripped to bone, no horror movie death, just fish being fish, and you being far too large and active for them to see as prey. Conclusion: myth versus reality. So what have we learned? Piranhas have been wildly mischaracterized in popular culture thanks to a staged demonstration in 1914 and decades of horror movies that followed. The reality is that piranhas are mostly peaceful scavengers and herbivores. The few carnivorous species hunt fish their own size, not humans. They're scared of large, active creatures like you. There has never been a confirmed human death from piranha attack. But piranhas do have incredibly powerful bites relative to their size. Stronger than sharks, alligators, and even dinosaurs in relative terms. In the extremely unlikely event that they attacked you in large numbers, the result would be catastrophic. Fortunately, that event is so unlikely as to be essentially impossible under normal circumstances. You're safer swimming with piranhas than you are driving to the beach. The next time you see a movie featuring killer piranhas, you can enjoy the fiction while knowing the truth. These fish are far more afraid of you than you should be of them. If you enjoyed learning the truth behind this famous myth, subscribe for more explorations of misunderstood creatures and the reality behind Hollywood's monsters. Stay curious and don't believe everything you see in movies.